You guys are what, the translator for your parents?
And so all I remember is trying to use my Spanglish skills because I'm like, I don't know. You don't have a Google Translate.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah.
have smartphones back then.
Right.
And it's not just school. It's not just home. It's not the community. It's not the student. It's everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody has to have hands on deck.
Through this show, we strive to create a world where young individuals feel empowered to express themselves, where educators and students become partners in shaping the future, and where parents and young adults build bridges of understanding that span the generations. We aim to create a society where everyone's voice is heard, valued, and respected. Welcome to Coach's Corner.
Where are you from? I want to know a little bit about your childhood and your upbringing, and then we go from there.
Alrighty. So the question is, was I born in Madeira? And so no, I was not born in Madeira. I was born actually down south in a place called Santa Monica. So if everybody's familiar, it's a nice beachy area, very sunny, never exceeds anything beyond 95.
Ooh, man.
And so I was there up until maybe, I started kinder, so around 5. That's when we moved here to Madeira. And then the first thing I experienced was the summer heat. And I just remember I didn't like it here. I'm like, I don't want to be here. But it's been nice. I've been here since. And so it's been a nice place to live.
Okay, so did you graduate from Madeira?
I did.
Oh, okay.
So I graduated from Madeira High. I'm not going to say the year because then people are going to do the math.
Oh, my goodness, stop.
But I graduated from Madeira High. That was back. If anybody's familiar with Madeira, we used to have 2 campuses, but it was one school.
Okay.
One high school. We just had we had to commute from one campus to the other. And so I was there, I graduated, and then from there I just started higher ed. I started my college experience.
Wow. So before we get to the college experience, I like to kind of go through the childhood, right? I like to know about somebody's childhood upbringing and any challenges or obstacles you had. Like, what was the hardest year for you that you thought? Like, was it middle school, high school, elementary? Like, what was the hardest year for you?
Oh, man. I think each year was hard. I think every phase has their own challenges. When I started kinder, because I'll just go back at kinder, I didn't know any English. My mom and my dad, they're both Spanish speakers, and they ended up, well, my mom never did, and my dad only learned a little bit, just enough to survive in the U.S. So when we grew up, we didn't speak anything. In the household, it was just Spanish, and so when I started school, I didn't understand anything anybody was saying.
Wow.
It's like being dropped in a foreign country.
Yeah.
And you didn't know what's going on. And so I had to learn. I was an EL, so anybody who knows, English learner. I was an EL student up until middle school. And so after that, it was just adapting. And I knew English was not my favorite subject from the get-go. I just never liked English. Anything with writing, anything with reading, anything that I could get away with, I'll just do the very minimal and then just get the grade and just move on. But I really thrive in math.
Oh.
And so I knew I wanted to do something with math. So I figured, you know what? I'm just going to be a teacher. I'm going to be a math teacher. And then we go up to middle school, and then that's a whole new set of challenges right there, not just with the language barrier, but now with the kids and the environment. And now you're dealing with the whole middle school.
Trying to figure it out.
Yeah, trying to figure out who you are in middle school, trying to still master the language.
Yeah.
And so I have my sister who's a year older than me, so she would try to take me under her wing, and she would try to get me, but I was very independent, and I just wanted to do my own thing, and I wanted to explore, but she would always just kind of redirect me and just try to guide me. But she had the same challenges I did. And so we always spoke at home with Spanish, and we had friends at school that spoke Spanish. And so the only time we really learned English was in school.
Wow.
And, but I think that's what helped me because I know what it's like not to know something and try to struggle and trying to navigate through that.
Yeah, that's huge, especially not knowing English, right? Because I get kind of nervous when I go to Mexico. Like, dang, I want to know y'all. I want to know what they're saying. I want to know their language. So it's like more of a, but you guys coming here and so you guys are what, the translator for your parents?
Yes, it's interesting. 'Cause imagine, I have a 11-year-old boy,
Okay.
a son. Imagine having him translate documents for the parents.
Yeah.
And so all I remember is trying to use my Spanglish skills because I'm like, I don't know, you don't have a Google Translate,
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
have smartphones back then.
Right.
And so it's like, I don't know. And your parents just depend on you and your sister to do the translating because a lot of the times they didn't know what it was. And it was a big learning experience. But I have to thank them now because now I'm fluent. But I'm like bilingual.
That's
so
super
I
cool.
can talk to Spanish. I can do both languages.
Wow.
Because I never lost the practice.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's been interesting. And then my parents were not educated in the U.S. They never went to school in the U.S. So they didn't know. And you don't know what you don't know.
Right, right.
And so they didn't know what questions to ask the teachers. They didn't know where to navigate for resources. They didn't know where to ask for help. They didn't know any of this. They didn't know about colleges. They didn't know about higher ed.
Wow.
They didn't know about all these opportunities and scholarships and FAFSA and grants and all these different things that are available.
Yeah.
They didn't know. And because they didn't know, we didn't know.
Yeah.
And so now you have to depend on teachers and counselors and all these people. But when you're going through the cracks and they just see you just doing the basic and the bare minimal, then that's it.
Yeah.
You don't get that additional pathways or options.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I did experience growing up.
Wow. So let's go to high school. Let's go to like your junior, senior year, right?
Okay.
That's when it's kind of like it's getting real. Okay, I got to figure it out. It's the next step for me. And like you said, your parents really didn't have that ABC for you guys laid out. Did you have anybody that, like you say, counselors or mentors? Do you have anybody besides your sister that was kind of like, okay, girls, I think you should do it this way? It was just y'all?
It's interesting because I'm a counselor now.
Okay.
I'm a school counselor, and maybe that's why I became a school counselor. Because I did have my counselor who followed me from middle school.
Wow.
So he was my counselor from 7th grade all the way into 12th. But I never had that conversation with him about higher ed and the options and scholarships and when to apply and the deadlines and any of that. And so, again, having family or parents that are not educated, it's like, how am I going to let my 17-year-old daughter, remember, it's a Mexican household and Latino household, how am I going to let my daughter leave the house to go to a whole new city away from us to go get an education? And so, again, goes back to they didn't know.
Yeah.
So they're like, no, just start here. You stay here.
Yeah.
And so not having the support, not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't know. And so we started, again, we live in Madera, so I started at the community college in Madera because that's the closest one to my house.
Okay.
And so from there, we transferred over to Fresno State.
So when you say we,
my sister and I.
So okay, did you feel like you had, as you're older now, did you feel like you had your own path, or you were just doing what your sister was doing?
I basically followed my sister.
Okay.
And it's interesting because when I was younger, we're only a year apart.
Yeah.
But then everything she did, I wanted to do. If she wanted to dress this way, I wanted to dress like that too.
Yeah.
If she did this, I wanted to do that too. And so she went to community college, and I was like, well, I'm going to community college too.
Yeah.
And then she went to Fresno State, and I was like, well, I'm going to Fresno State too. And I think she was one who had to navigate and go through those trenches to open it up for me to follow.
Got you.
So I'll give her the full credit.
Got you.
But it's interesting because once I knew that I wanted to go in business. I knew I wanted to do something in math. Let's just say that.
Okay.
I knew I wanted to do something in math. But I didn't know what career to pursue. And so at that point, I'm like, well, what's the closest thing to math besides being a mathematician? I was like, well, let's do business. Let's go with business. And then I was like, well, what about business do I like? And so I was like, well, let's do accounting. Accounting does numbers.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up going into business administration.
Wow. So you graduated, you went to community college, transferred to Fresno State, and went for accounting.
Correct.
Okay, so when did that shift for you? Like, okay, I want to get back into the school.
So it's interesting because even though I was majoring in business, I never left education. So at my high school year, I was a senior. I got involved. I started working because you're able to work at 16.
Yeah.
I got a job at 17, and I was working at the high school that I was enrolled in.
Oh, okay.
So I would go get my classes, and then the last 2 periods, I would work. And so I was like, this is a nice gig.
Yeah.
And so then after that, I decided to get another job within Madera Unified, which I'm going to disclaim, within Madera Unified. And so I started helping with the program. So I started working with students.
Okay.
And I really liked doing that. I really did. And when I went to community college at Madera, I started working at the college. So all along, I was working in education, but yet my career was in business.
Yeah.
And so then I did that. I worked in preschool for many years. And then after that, of course, I became a mom, and I wanted to be a mom.
Yeah.
And after that, I was like, you know what? I need to go back to work. And that's when I started working in a program, a nonprofit, educating parents and how to advocate for their students.
Wow.
And so at this point, I already got my business administration degree. I was already an accounting major. I got my bachelor's degree, but yet I was still working in the education spectrum. And after that, I was like, you know what? If I majored in business, I need to do something in business. So I decided to get into an accounting position. I did accounting for a company in Selma, and it was a completely different experience. The way I had imagined business and numbers was just not as fascinating because I didn't feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, I'm doing math and I'm doing all these entries, but it wasn't fulfilling.
Right.
I was just fulfilling my boss's pocket. But I was like, I didn't feel accomplished. And I just remember working at the nonprofit. I remember working in preschool and working at the high school, and that brought me joy. It brought me that fulfillment that I needed, not just the paycheck, but the fulfillment. And so then I decided to, I gave accounting another try. I stayed there a little longer. And then after that, I was like, this is not my calling.
Wow.
This is not me. And I decided to go back to Madera. And I started working at a high school, a comprehensive high school. And I just started as a liaison. I would connect families with the school, and that was me.
Wow.
That was me connecting families in the school. And then from there, I got another position where I was able to advocate now for the students. And I was basically, those that got in trouble, I was there advocating for them.
Yeah.
Those who didn't have a voice,
So
I was
you did
there.
voice. Yeah.
I gave them a voice.
Yeah.
And so from there, I was like, you know what? This is not enough. I need to do more. This is not enough for me. I'm doing a lot, but I'm like, I need to do more. And so I got a calling of, the universe or from above. And it's like, you know what? I want to be a counselor. But I was like, no, I can't do a counselor. Like, how am I going to be a counselor? And you kind of have that imposter syndrome.
Right.
It's like, how can I be a counselor? And I was like, I don't have a shot. There's all these people qualified who are getting these positions. How am I going to qualify for this position?
Wow.
And so I didn't do it. I didn't get my master's in counseling. I was fearful of that experience. I didn't want to fail, and because I didn't want to fail, I didn't try. So I didn't get my master's in counseling. I decided to get my first master's in business not in business. I got my first one in administration and leadership.
Oh.
That's where I got it, because I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go into higher ed, and I'm gonna work for a college. And I did that, but I still had that calling.
Yeah.
I didn't feel fulfilled.
It won't leave.
It won't leave me.
Yeah.
And so I graduated. I got my master's in 2019, I want to say. But I still had this void. I was still doing the same position, and I just felt like I was not doing enough, and I need to do more. And then finally, I came up to the family, and I said, I'm going back to school.
Shoot.
And at this point, we're already hitting the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, what do you do, right?
Yeah.
Everything is shut down.
Right.
What do I do
You
with
got
my time?
now.
I got time.
Yep.
So I told the family, I'm going back and I'm getting just a credential.
Yeah.
I told them, I'm just getting a credential. And so I got my PPS in counseling. And then halfway through the program, I was like, you know what? I should get a master's.
Oh, man.
And so that's what I did. So I go back to the family, to the drawing board, and I told them, I'm going to get a second master's. So in 2021, I got my second master's
Wow.
in school counseling with a PPS credential.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. That's huge. It shows you how much when you try to hold yourself back from a purpose and it just keep pulling on you, and you was just doubting yourself. But the man upstairs, that's what I believe in.
Yeah.
He said, wait a minute, nah, you ain't leaving from this. You get fulfilled from that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's super cool. You went to go get your master's. So now you're working for it, the whole Madeira Unified, or just you can't really specify where you at. But.
Right. So I was working at a comprehensive.
Okay.
And at the comprehensive, you work with students who, we call it at promise,
Okay.
who need that extra support.
Gotcha.
They need we have the elite students who are like the APs,
Yeah.
and then we have those that are not and just need that additional resources.
Okay.
And so I would work with that group of students, and if an opportunity came up for me to work in alternative education. And so I was like, this is my calling.
Yeah.
I just, it's interesting because I had this feeling. I tell my kids at school, I'm like, I felt it in my bones. Like, it was like I belonged here. It's interesting how I didn't even apply for it. Well, at that moment, I haven't applied for it, but I already felt like that's where I was going to be.
Right.
And so I did. I ended up applying. And it happened so quickly. Honestly, everybody knew but me that I had gotten the job.
Wow.
So I kept getting text messages from my friends congratulating me for the
and you
position.
didn't know yet.
And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not there.
Yeah.
And so I was fortunate enough to be selected. And so now I work at an alternative education site. And so it's been a very beautiful experience.
Right. I'm excited to have you on here because I had to come up with a couple of questions. I'm like, man, she's in the field that I love to go speak to students in that way. So, like, when it comes to of what their friends want this person to be like what do you see the most? Like when they come to you, like what do you?
It's interesting because when I was in high school, I thought the world was going to end just because, your hair is just out of place, right?
Yeah.
You think like everything is going to end. But then now that I work at the site I'm in and you hear their stories, I'm like, oh my gosh, like how can you endure so much? It's not just like, oh, my mom got mad at me. No, we're talking real stuff. We're talking stuff that happens on the streets. We're talking life and death situations. And for me, I don't understand how being so young, and yeah, they're tall because they're just physically tall.
Yeah.
But they're so
Still
young.
babies,
They're
yeah.
still my babies.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can you go through all of this being so young? Like me being an adult is very traumatic.
Right.
If I were to experience what you guys experience. And we're talking real life things. We're talking about them being fearful sometimes. We're talking just things that sometimes we don't imagine that kids are exposed to.
Right.
But they are.
Yeah.
Being afraid to go home. We're talking about being afraid to go on the streets because you're afraid of somebody.
Yeah.
We're talking crime. We're talking substance abuse. We're talking domestic violence. We're talking all these things. And it doesn't just happen in alternative ed.
Right,
it
right.
happens in other sides.
Yeah.
But it's just, as I talk to my students, the more I learn from them, I have a son, and I'm thinking, my son could be exposed to this, just like they've been exposed to it. And so it's been a challenge for me because you try not to submerge yourself into their life, but as you get to know them, you can't help but build a connection with them. And so I don't just see them as my student and I'm just the counselor.
Right.
No, they're my babies.
Yeah, yeah,
and I
yeah.
tell them that,
Yeah.
like, no, it comes from a place of love.
Right.
Tell them, like, you are my baby. And it's a good relationship that I built, and I think that's the beauty of my job, that I'm able to get to know them, not just by their name or by their ID number, but by their stories.
Wow. So what do you think, what's missing? Like, what's missing for them? Like, what is it, the connection? Is it the love? Like, what do you think that's missing? Because you, like you said, you've seen and heard the stories of these kids and their kids. And like, some adults be like, man, these kids, this generation don't know nothing. This generation this generation this. Like, what do you think that's missing?
I think there's a lot of factors. Accountability would be one. And we're not just talking accountability from the students. We're talking accountability from the site. We're talking accountability from the district. We're talking accountability from the state.
Yeah.
We're talking accountability from the country. We're talking accountability from the home, from the household.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes, you know, we want to implement programs. Okay, but are we just doing it to check off a list, or how effective are we?
Right.
And I feel like we're more intentional, at least from my site and other sites that I've been acquainted with. We try to be intentional, but at the end of the day, I think it has to be a team effort. And it's not just school, it's not just home, it's not the community, it's not the student, it's everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody has to have hands on deck. Because the moment one person steps out, then we're already missing. Imagine a table. You know, you need the 4 legs to hold this table.
Right, right.
And the moment you take off one leg, that table is not sturdy anymore.
Yep.
And that's how it is with this student. And so I think it's everybody. Everybody needs to be in it.
Accountable to all one group. Man, that's first of all, I love what you do, you know, especially in the counseling, because I know that it could be effective on you as a person. It could be just energy, just draining, because you want to give so much, but you only can give once they leave that building. You know, your hands is up.
Right.
So how do you stay like your mind? Does it follow when you go home?
It does. You know, it's interesting. You can't just shut off your brain
Right,
and it's like
right.
leave it at work. Even though people say, well, just leave work at home. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, I've gone to the point that my kids sometimes will text me at night, or they'll email me when they are struggling or they need that help, and be like, hey, Miss Santana, like, can you call me? Like, I need your help.
Dang.
And I was like, okay, this is urgent.
Yeah, yeah,
If you're
yeah.
calling, if you're texting me at 8 p.m.,
Yeah.
okay, something's happening. And but it's that relationship you built with them. It's like they know that they have somebody who's going to be on that other line. And so no, you can't just shut the brain off and walk away.
Yeah.
No, there's moments where it's just, I think about my kids. It's like, oh my gosh, we're going on break. You know, how is that going to be? Or if we're on break and then they'll just message me. And so sometimes it's good messages. Sometimes they're just, you know, they have questions and they need help and they just don't know who to go to. And so that's what, you know, they try to go to the people they know.
Right.
And I think that's the beauty at the site I work in, is that it's not just the counselor. We're talking the team. You know, from the administrator to the custodian.
Yeah.
You know, even our custodian, they call him uncle.
See, that's
And so it's not just the custodian. It's uncle.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not just a teacher. It's somebody there for them. It's not just a staff member. It's somebody they built a connection with. And I think that's the beauty, that it's not just this, you're the student, I'm this role, and that. No, it's a relationship that we built.
Yeah, that's love, man. Just to know that they have somebody to come to, because you never know what's going on in somebody's household, in their heart, in their head, in their mind, and it's like I couldn't imagine growing up in this world right now, because it's just so much things that, like, social media is one of the craziest things, is like, there's so many people pretending and they really think it's like that. And it's like, I give it to you. I give you all the credit. I just love for basically doing what you're doing because they need us. They need you. They need parents. Everybody. Just like you said, everybody got to be accountable. We can't just have them out there.
Right.
Because there's a reason why they're out there, and it's not they didn't put themselves out there. It's something happened in between that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had the opportunity to go back and talk to your younger self,
Oh boy.
what would you tell that little girl that's coming up as you became an adult, the obstacles you've been through? What would you go back and tell her?
You know, it's interesting. When I was younger, there was a point in my life I battled depression, and I never spoke about it with anybody. And it wasn't until I became an adult that I started talking about going through it and the thoughts I had that followed because of depression. And there was a moment in my life that I didn't see the purpose in living. I existed, but I didn't know why I existed. And so now that I'm older and I look back, I always think if I would have done that to myself, I would have not been able to see this. I would have missed out on the opportunities life has given me. And we're talking life with my family, we're talking life with my son, we're talking life with my friends, we're talking life with my students, we're talking about everything that I would have missed out because of that. And so for me, when I reflect, I would have told myself, like, let's get you help. Like, it's okay to speak up. And sometimes students battle with depression or anxiety or you name it. They battle a lot of things. And sometimes because they're fearful or they're embarrassed, they don't say anything. And they just internalize it and they try to figure it out and they never ask for help or they never look for help. And I try to empower the students and say, you know what, it's okay because you're not doing this on your own. You're here, but we're here to help you.
Right.
And so I think that would have been me had I spoken up. If I would have said something, if I would have been like, I need help.
Yeah.
I need to talk to a counselor. But I didn't know. And so it's just those things that you don't know in the moment, but as you mature in life, you reflect. And so now, because I've been through it, I tell my students, like, I tell them every morning. I go out there every morning as they get off the bus. Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning. And I tell them, and I ask them, you know why I tell you good morning? Because every student comes in with the same behavior every morning. But when they're not in that same pattern or they're off that day, I can see it from the get-go. And that's when I can pull them out.
Yeah. See,
and have those one-on-ones.
See, that's that connection that everybody needs when it comes to students. Like I'm telling you, you know your purpose. You know where you're supposed to be at, and that's so great. And I swear they need more people in the schools just like you. Not going in there for a paycheck. You can honestly see that you love what you do.
Yeah.
And so just imagine they have a whole bunch of schools like you in there. You know what I'm saying? It could be a turnaround for everybody.
You know, it's interesting, and I'm sure the counselors that, not just in Madera, but we're talking Fresno, Visalia, statewide, worldwide, all the counselors out there, I'm sure they're doing, I want to believe that they're in there because they love and the passion they have. But when I started at the school site I'm in, a lot of these kids, when you talk to them and you talk about higher ed, they don't think of higher ed. They only think about maybe a technical school, or they just talk about maybe going into the workforce. They don't talk about college. They don't talk about Fresno State. They don't talk about UC Merced. They don't talk about 4 years, right? And so I went to a conference and I saw the president from Fresno State, President Sandoval. And I came up to him and I said, you know what, my name is Lucia Santana. I'm the counselor at the school site. It would be an honor if you came and spoke to my kids. And he did. He did. And it was like the most beyond special moments because he could have been at any school site. We're talking any comprehensive, right? With 2,000, 3,000 kids. And he chose a smaller school.
Wow.
And he came and he spoke with our kids. And after that, I had a couple kids tell me that they wanted to go to college.
Wow. You know what? I want to thank you. Thank you for coming on my show today. That right there, we just going to stop right there. You got kids that want to go to a 4-year college that wasn't even thinking about it. Just by you stepping out, going to this president, and like, hey, you should come here and just talk to him. I'm telling you, we need more people like you.
Yeah.
We need more people like you. And I want to just say thank you so much for taking the time to come on my show and just give people your greatness, your light that you shine bright. You know what I'm saying? So I just want you just give it all to you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me. And it was a pleasure being here.
I like it. Hey, that's it, you guys. We're finished with another episode of Coach's Corner. Thank you, Lucia, for coming. And we're out of here. Let's go.
Welcome to Coach's Corner, a platform dedicated to giving students and young adults